A South Carolina lawmaker says that the Federal Reserve is headed for an ugly breakdown, and he wants his state to be prepared when it sinks. How prepared? Well, he suggests that South Carolina take matters and money into its own hands, quite literally. Republican State Senator Lee Bright says that South Carolinians need to create their own currency as a backup in case people lose faith in the dollar. We're talking the U.S. dollar. And in this new legislation, pushing the idea, Bright claims, quote, many widely recognized experts predict the inevitable destruction of the Federal Reserve System's currency through hyperinflation in the foreseeable future. So, is individual state currency a real backup plan? Or is it, as one lawmaker has suggested, a real waste of time? Joining us now, South Carolina State Senator Dave Thomas, who supports the legislation. And Senator, thank you very much for being with us.
Well, I appreciate you having me. Thank you. And it sounds awfully draconian and may sound odd when you first think about it, but I think when we look at it, and I asked the South Carolina Sound Money folks, that's an organization here in the state, just to come and make a presentation. We opened the doors and allowed the House members and senators to sit in on their presentation. And of course, part of the presentation was the belief that there could be hyperinflation, and we've seen, of course, historic examples in the past, even 50 years, but the most credible example, of course, is, or the most telling, would have been Germany after World War I. And with all the money that has been pumped into the American economy, the issue has become, are we going to see inflation, not just single double-digit, but just perhaps out-of-control inflation? So,
okay, all right, Dave, let me just stop you there, because I got that, because that does make sense, and historically we've seen precedent for it. But just tell me, how would the currency in South Carolina look? I mean, would you go to an ATM and it spits out coin and currency from South Carolina?
The authorities that we were talking to weren't so much into coinage. Now, that's what Lee Bright's legislation proposes. I think the better way to think of this would be to have electronic exchanges, because your nuances of gold as well as silver could be fairly small, but in terms of, say, a credit card that would access your gold account or the state gold account. So if the state wanted to pay in its gold reserve, then it would simply transfer to one who also, to a creditor who also had the gold account set up. And it would be a backup. Don't think of it as a replacement of the dollar.
I got you. It's a backup
plan. Think of it as a backup.
Right. All right. And if emergency planning does have a backup plan. Does South Carolina have a gold reserve at this particular point?
No. This is all novel. It's novel with all 50 states. So it would be something we would have to, you would have to go to a company that handles gold reserves. You would buy a certain amount of gold from them. Then it would just be like depositing money in a bank account.
Right. Now, what do you think this study, though, is going to cost? Because I've read that South Carolina right now is facing a $700 million deficit. So can you really afford to look into what some might consider a pie-in-the-sky idea?
That would sort of be ironic, wouldn't it? If
yeah.
You know, the very thing you put forward to save the state turned out that you couldn't afford it. Well, my proposal, now, I haven't put my bill forward yet. Lee jumped and he put his in. My proposal, if I do one, but I've still got to look at all the issues in this, and so it's kind of on the front end for me. I mean, in theory, I can understand the concern. I like going this direction. I'm probably still at stage 1 or 2, and the issue would be how much. It would cost nothing, and here's why it costs nothing. You would ask experts to participate. Under my proposal, it would be perhaps under the Treasurer's office. You would have experts to literally, on their own dime, come into the state and explain what could be done. Now, remember, this would be a theoretical construct by experts who are in the field who would be willing to give up their time simply because one state stepped forward.
I got it. You've got the experts and they come in and they volunteer.
Yeah.
But what's the bottom line goal for this? I mean, some might say that what you're hinting at here is the first stages of secession. And historically, South Carolina has been there before.
Well, that's quite ironic. I mean, and I had my great-great-grandparentage from both sides of the family. As a matter of fact, we're in that category. But trust me, this has nothing to do with secession. This is not radical in that sense. What this is merely a backup concept. We're using a gold-silver standard, and that's what this country used to have. And all it is saying if we get out of control, we should have something that would be a quick fallback that's already being used, and so that's what this concept is about.
Plan B. All right,
B.
Dave Thomas, thanks very much
Thank
for
you.
joining us and talking to us about the idea. Thank you.